Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Sofa Sports News Football Podcast, brought to you by sofasportsnews.com and Greek Beat Radio. I'm joined this evening by two very special guests. First of all, Sofa Sports News blogger and Spurs fan, Dan Luca. Dan, how you doing, my friend?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Feels like I haven't seen your face in a while. And we're also joined this evening by the host of the very popular Shoot the Defence football show, Stel. Stel, welcome once again.
Thanks for having me on again, mate. How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. A bit tired, but not too bad, you know. Busy.
I can imagine, mate.
Right, let's kick off this week's show. So at the top of each show, we put out a question to you, the listeners, and give you the chance to have your say on the topic in question. This week's Your View question is, how highly do this Chelsea team rank amongst the great Premier League winners of the past? Dan, I want to start with you on this one.
Well, first of all, I mean, if you're finishing above this Tottenham team, then you're exceptional. But seriously, I think they're better than we gave them credit for. I didn't think they were going to get close to Man City or Manchester United or Arsenal this year, who I thought would lead the pack. And that's because they had a bad season last year, and some players struggle to recover from that. But Conte's gone straight in and done it. If you look at the points tally, they're going to beat Sunderland, aren't they? That's going to be 93 points, which is going to be the second highest points total in Premier League history. And what's more, they will have the highest amount of wins. So just looking at that very quietly, without doing anything fancy necessarily, winning a lot of games by one goal, they've pulled clear comfortably. And I mean, we've been calling them winners since November, and they've seen it out very professionally. And I can't see a fault in them. The players on the bench, the players who start, the coach, there's not a single fault in that side. And I think probably one of the top three sides that we've seen in the Premier League, and we might appreciate them in a few years' time when we look back.
Stel, what about yourself? How highly do you rank this Chelsea side?
I rate them, but not as highly as Dan. I mean, Dan said they have the second highest points tally if and when they beat Sunderland. I mean, the best points tally is the 2004-2005 Chelsea team, where they got 95 points. And that team, I mean, they won the title. They wrestled it off Arsenal, who won the previous season. They went the whole season unbeaten. You know, Mourinho came in, obviously spent big, but they had the most away wins that season. They had the most clean sheets that season, the fewest goals conceded away in a season. Unbeaten at home, one loss all season, and that was in October when they lost 1-0 to City. So for me, that's the best Chelsea side. But the difference between that side and this side is that side had this fear factor. You knew that when you look in that tunnel, when you saw Terry, Drogba, Robben, Duff, Makelele, Petr Cech, Carvalho, you're looking at that team and you're like, this isn't going to be good. This isn't going to end well. Whereas this team under Conte, granted, they're organised. They're a very well-drilled unit. But when I see them up against, like for example, Old Trafford when they played us, I looked at that team and I thought we were going to get hammered, not because Chelsea were that good, but because we're that bad. Spurs gave them a run for their money. Okay, granted, they chased them all the way. Arsenal gave them the hiding at 3-0. So I wouldn't rate them as high as many would think. But like I said, it is all about opinions anyway.
I think they've had an advantage of not being in the Champions League, which over the last couple of seasons, that's proved to be an advantage. So a lot of their players have been protected in that respect. But I almost see this Chelsea as two teams this season. There was the side before the Arsenal hiding, and after that hiding, I had a bet with Harry Simu, which I'm going to have to pay out now, that Tottenham would finish above Chelsea, which is going to cost me 20 of my hard-earned pounds. But from that day, it was almost a different side. Everyone knew Conte was going to play free at the back, and when he didn't start, it took a lot of people by surprise. And credit to him for trying it, and credit to him for changing it as soon as he did. He knew after that Arsenal game that he couldn't wait any longer. So it's almost a different side from that point. And I agree with you about the 2004 side, 2004-05, and they're probably one of my top three, probably along with the Invincibles. Maybe Manchester United with the Tevez Ronaldo team, which I rated extremely highly. And it's just the way they've been efficient. They've been efficient. They've been tight at the back. They've been solid going forward. And when they've had to bring players on, they've impressed me. So there's no, I'm not disrespecting him necessarily, but like John Obi Mikel, those guys, they're kind of good, but you don't know how, you don't know why. You look at the players coming off of Chelsea's bench, and you're looking at title after title from Barcelona. Fabregas is coming off the bench. They've got the player of the season from last season, Willian, coming off the bench. And after the semi-final, their squad depth was praised quite a lot. And I think that's what makes them so impressive for me. That they haven't used many players, but even if they had to, like for like, they've got replacements pretty much all over the park. So they've impressed me a lot, particularly in the last 6 or 7 games where I've been looking at their fixtures, thinking where will they drop points. And you've picked a couple of games like Manchester City, for example, Everton away, and they've won those games comfortably, a lot more comfortably than the Man City scoreline suggests as well.
Yep. I mean, we've got some comments coming through on Facebook. Kojak says, if they win their last... By the way, that's a great name before I continue. Kojak. If they win their last fixture, they will be the first side to win 30 games in a season. Boys, is that more impressive than Arsenal's invincible season? Because Kojak seems to think so. Would you rather win 30 games or would you rather win 26 and remain unbeaten?
Go on then.
Look, my problem with the Arsenal's invincible season, I think Arsenal could have won 30 games if they wanted to. So I think it'd be a bit harsh to discredit Arsenal for that. I think Arsenal got to the point where the league was wrapped up a lot earlier. They didn't have a team chasing them necessarily. Beyond, I think the league title was actually wrapped up in April, wasn't it? Early April as well. So I think once the league was in the bag.
No, Old
Trafford. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I was waiting for you to get that in. White Hart Lane doesn't exist anymore, so technically that's it's gone. It's not. It's reduced to rubble. That's.
What do you mean? It looks the same as it always did.
Unbelievable. So I think once the league title was in the bag for Arsenal, they changed their focus to start drawing games, didn't they? Or being a bit more solid. They were more interested in the record. A bit like Harry Kane tonight. He was more interested in the Golden Boot. He would have been happy if we lost that game 7-5 and he was shooting from all over the place, taking 60-yard free kicks. So I wouldn't discredit Arsenal for that necessarily. I don't think you need to compare the two. I get what Kojak's saying. It's an easy thing to point at and say they've won more games. I just think you need to look at this team for what it is, as more of an efficient unit, whereas Arsenal was more free-flowing. It was more the sort of style I'd want to watch. So if I had to watch 38 games again, I'd watch Arsenal's Invincibles just because of the football they played. That's what I want to see.
Yeah. What about you, Stel? How do you look at that?
I'm going to flip it. I'm going to flip it a bit. Put that Arsenal team against this Chelsea team. Who wins? It's going to be Arsenal all the way. Arsenal steamrolled over teams. They had power. They had pace. They were clinical. I mean, let's be 100% honest. Chelsea, as good as they are, they've got the deficiencies at the back. Right? I don't think Moses is fantastic defensively. I think Alonso's got mistakes in him. Luis especially. I mean, granted, he hasn't been Sideshow Bob David Luiz that we used to see. Cahill hasn't got the legs. Azpilicueta's been fantastic, don't get me wrong, but Matic, mistakes in him. That Arsenal team, Vieira, who else was in that middle of the park? You had Ljungberg, you had Pires, you had
Edu.
Gilberto was one of the most unsung heroes I've ever seen. That back four was phenomenal. They steamrolled over everyone, like I said. For me, it's Arsenal. And let's be honest, what would you rather do? Go the whole season unbeaten or win 30 games? Well, going the whole season unbeaten won't ever be repeated. I don't think, anyway, in my lifetime.
Yeah, I agree.
Then again, I don't know how long we've got left. I might get hit by a bus tomorrow knowing someone's luck. So.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Arsenal's.
Sorry, Stel, if you get hit by a bus, just make sure Mourinho's not driving it, mate. That'd be cool.
Yeah, but it just stopped like that, wouldn't it?
What do you mean that Mourinho's bus doesn't move? So there's no chance of him not getting over. Right, guys, don't forget this show will be available to download as a podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, and Stitcher from midnight tonight. If you're listening live now, we want to hear your thoughts. But if you're listening to the podcast, it's never too late. We still want to hear your views on the topics we discuss. You can tweet us at @SovaSportsNews_ or post in the Facebook group, the Football Fan Network. Right, let's move on to Dan's team. Former Spurs midfielder and BBC pundit, if you can call him that, Jermaine Genius, believes Wembley is a genuine issue for Spurs, and the timing of their temporary move there next season will cost them the Premier League title. Dan, do you agree with those comments? What do you make?
Right, let's start bit by bit. To say it's going to cost us a Premier League title implies we're going to win it anyway if we don't move. So obviously, Genesis is going to have to expect some challenge on that. We wouldn't be a shoo-in for the title. We stayed at White Hart Lane. We were there this season. We've won 17 games there. We haven't won the title this year. So for sure, it's a blow not playing at home. And what I didn't realise until earlier this week, I assumed that we'd go there and we'd be able to have the pitch dimensions the way we'd want them. But in actual fact, because there is a rule in the Premier League of a minimum pitch size you have to have if possible, and because White Hart Lane was too small, we couldn't reach that dimension. In Wembley, that's not going to be the case. So we're going to have to play on a bigger pitch. So look, we've got great players. We've got a great coach. He will work it out, and Wembley won't be as much of a failure as it has been this season. Are we going to win 17 games and draw 2 next season? I don't think so. So we're going to have to find ways to pick up points elsewhere. So yeah, it's going to cost us. It's going to cost us points. I don't think we'll get as many points as home as next season. That's a fact. We're going to have to deal with that. Just a tip of the cap to Jonas. He was the only one of BBC's pundits who had Tottenham to finish second this season, and he got a bit of stick for that at the beginning of the season. So well done, JJ. He loved the goal against Arsenal as well. So he'll always be a friend of mine. Yeah, look, next season it's really tough for me as a Spurs fan right now to know what to expect. I think we have to say to us, if we win more games than we don't, if we keep hold of 80 to 90% of our starting 11, we're going to win more games. I think we just have to see where it takes us. We have to embrace it. We have to enjoy the fact there's going to be between 70 and 90,000 fans watching us every week. And we just need to treat it for what it is. It's a season away. It's almost a freebie. If we don't win the title, it's no different to any other year. If we kick on, we're going to be a very tough side to beat. It's going to be another enjoyable season.
Stel, what do you think of it? Do you think those comments are fair? Do you think it's right to rule Tottenham out of the title race just because they'll be playing their home games at Wembley next year?
I don't think so. I mean, when you've got someone like Harry Kane that scored like 72 goals in 3 seasons, you've always got a chance of winning something. Let's be 100% honest, Harry. There's two ways you can see it. The first way is that you've got Wembley Stadium, you've got clubs that have never played at Wembley before, fans that have never been to Wembley before. They're going to go there and they're going to be up for it, obviously. Do you know what I mean? It's the home of English football, as we're supposed to be, as we're led to believe. But then when you look at it on the flip side, I mean, granted, the acoustics aren't great at Wembley. I've been there a few times and it's difficult to generate an atmosphere. But if any set of supporters can generate an atmosphere there, it's Spurs. Hands down, they're one of the best set of supporters in the country as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not just saying that because Dan's on it. I mean, White Hart Lane was a fortress, as you've seen this season. But over the years, their fans are so vocal. You know, they've got a fantastic songbook. And if anyone can generate an atmosphere, it's them. And let's be honest, if you can't raise your game at Wembley, for Wembley to be your home, you can't raise your game, you don't deserve to win it. You know, but listen, it can only help Spurs if you think about it from a financial aspect. I mean, I don't know what percentage they're going to get of gate receipts and whatnot. But look, you've got a 90,000 seater stadium. They'll probably, how many fans do you think you'll get there, Dan? 80,000?
I think we'll have a few games where we get around the 70,000 mark. Right. Obviously, for the big game against Arsenal, Chelsea, United, I'd expect to sell it out there. And I think as an Arsenal and United fan, it's probably, I mean, Tottenham's not the nicest place to visit as a travelling fan anyway. The area, the walk from Seven Sisters Tube Station, the walk in, and the tightness of the stadium. So I think for a season, everyone will be looking forward to it. And the players, like you said, Stel, the players should be up for this. They should be embracing it. They should be looking to the stands, seeing 60 to 70,000 of their own supporters and be well up for the challenge. I think they're not going to sell it out every week. That's unrealistic. But to have those 5 big games a season where Wembley's packed to the rafters, I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for us compared to the alternatives on offer, and I think it should be an enjoyable season. A lot of new fans will get the chance to go and see Tottenham who struggle for tickets. It's a nightmare for non-members to get a ticket at Tottenham. So we could get some new fans coming through as well, and it's a good opportunity for us. We've got to see it like that.
The thing isn't it 5% the away allocation?
Yeah, so I think the Premier League rules are it's 5%.
So you're looking at what? If it's 90,000, my maths is rubbish. So you're looking at what? 4,500 away?
Yeah, 4,500 away. So 85,000 Spurs fans.
Yeah, well, there you go. If you can't make that a fortress, then
yeah, I agree with you. If the players can't rise to that occasion, they're not bad players. We're talking about good players now. Criticism of them last season was a lack of experience. They've had another year's experience. By next year, we should have players close to their prime who should be thoroughly embracing this.
Do you know what?
Go on. Sorry, I was going to say I won't have it as an excuse next season. If we don't go to Wembley and perform, it's because the players aren't good enough, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, does Wembley add to the pressure, and does playing at Wembley help you guys in the long run when you move into this new stadium? Because let's be fair on Arsenal, they moved from Highbury, which was 38,000, to this 60,000 seat stadium, and they not that they've gone backwards, but they've kind of like stagnated. Is that the right word to use? They kind of stood still.
I think they did.
Whereas you guys have got Wembley as like this like a stepping stone, like your middleman, so to speak. So you've gone from this 35,000 stadium to an 80,000, 90,000, and you're going back to the 60,000. So do you think that's kind of like helping you guys out in some way?
Yeah, I think by the time we get round to the new White Hart Lane opening, or like, I don't know, the NFL stadium, or like Cocoa Pops Arena, whatever it's going to be called, by the time we get round to that, this will have helped that experience, I hope, playing in front of a big crowd, playing in front of a stadium where perhaps there's only going to be one stand of atmosphere, if that makes sense. So all the existing members, I'm told, are being moved into similar locations. And I think the new stadium will be like that, where we have the one end. So, like teams historically have benefited from a famous end, like the Cock is the one that springs to mind. Spurs have the Shelf. So I think the club have really thought this through. A lot of people will say, well, they've gone to Wembley for the revenue. I think it's more than that with Tottenham. I think they've thought every element of this through, including like the design of the new stadium. And maybe I'm clutching at straws. Maybe I'm being a hopeful Spurs supporter. I know we're going to suffer a bit next season, but if we can hit the ground running, get a couple of early wins under our belt at Wembley, it soon starts to feel like a nicer place to turn up.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, Dan, I'll take your point on board. That, when you said earlier on that you'll be able to get some new fans in there, and that Stel said it should be a fortress. I think what's going to happen, though, is very similar to what happened at my club, Arsenal, where you will get those new fans and you will get, at times, a fantastic atmosphere, but you're also going to fill up the stadium most weeks with tourist fans. And that can have a detrimental effect on the atmosphere. I can tell you that firsthand. And the bigger the stadium, the more of those casual tourist fans you're going to get. So whilst I think it's a good thing, you're not going to generate the atmosphere you generated at White Hart Lane. I'll be very surprised if you do.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we know what the downsides are going to be. You're not going to have 90,000 singing lunatics like you get at White Hart Lane. There's been times in the last 2 or 3 seasons where the White Hart Lane atmosphere has been flatter than maybe 5 years ago. And a lot of that comes with when you turn up at games and you're expected to win. Maybe at Wembley, the expectation to win at the beginning won't be as it is at White Hart Lane now. I've turned up at White Hart Lane the last few weeks. And granted, Man United played a weakened side. But the last few weeks, we've turned up and you've expected to win. Last season, and the season under Villas-Boas particularly, if Tottenham hadn't scored for 25 minutes, you started to get a little bit of moaning and groaning. So maybe a little bit of pressure might help in the early weeks. I think we've got to see how it goes.
Yeah.
My biggest fear with it, probably the last thing I'll say on Wembley, my biggest fear with Wembley at the moment some of the teams we've lost to at Wembley this year actually turned out to be decent sides, like Monaco, for example. We lost to Chelsea. All right, we drew with the Belgian pub team, but we had 10 men, whatever. But the thing with Wembley is, if Arsenal don't win the FA Cup, then we've got to play a Charity Shield game there before we start against Chelsea. And then if we lose that, straight away the pressure's on. And I think hopefully, I don't know, can Arsenal and Chelsea both lose? Have they changed the rules? I don't know what's going to happen. But, it's just things like that. I just think we need to get a nice early home fixture first and win it. And then hopefully things will get easier.
Yeah, it's a confidence thing. It is a confidence thing. Right, let's move on. Huddersfield Town beat Sheffield Wednesday on penalties to reach the Championship playoff final. Terriers keeper Danny Ward saved from Sam Hutchinson and Fernando Forestieri in the shootout to give Town a 4-3 win. Stephen Fletcher put the Owls ahead when he headed home Barry Bannon's cross, but the visitors levelled when Colin Quaner's cross was turned in by Naki Wells. Is a penalty shootout a fair way to decide a game with so much riding on it? Stel, what are your thoughts on it? Should they decide these kind of huge games around penalty shootouts?
The old chestnut. It's tough to say because I joke about it and I say, well, why don't you just play till the next morning, kind of thing, like what we used to do when we were kids, just keep playing and playing and playing instead of making it 15 minutes each half, make it half an hour each half and just play for another hour, But I don't see why not. What's the problem? So many games have been determined by penalty shootouts. And let's be 100% honest. When it comes to, scoring from 12 yards, you need to have bottle. You need to have nerve. You need to have confidence. And isn't that what a professional footballer is all about? Having that testicular fortitude to actually step up and, stand out in front of a whole stand full of people booing you or cheering you on. I don't see where the problem lies, really. But that's just my opinion.
Dan, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think it's fair to decide playoffs on penalties? I mean, a playoff is a huge game for all involved. It can make or break a club. Promotion can be everything. What are your thoughts? Is it fair?
Yeah, I do think it's fair. I think it's the only way, to be honest. They've tried silver goal, they've tried golden goal. That didn't really seem fair, where you can benefit from a lucky deflection, the game's all over, there's no chance to recover. A penalty shootout is a test of a player's ability under the most extreme pressure. And you have to score. And the better players will score 9 times out of 10, and the better players will win the football match. And you look historically at big penalty shootouts, whether it be in World Cups or wherever it may be, and everyone says the team who goes first wins. You'll find more than that percentage-wise. The better team on paper wins, and people might have a problem with that. People who are romantic like the underdog to have a fair crack, but in terms of pitting two teams' ability, is there a better way than a penalty shootout? I don't think so.
Fair enough. I mean, Huddersfield Town will now face Reading at Wembley for a place in the Premier League after the Royals sneak through to the final. The winning strike came from the boot of Jan Kermorgan after referee Martin Atkinson, Dan's best mate, awarded Reading a controversial penalty for a handball. Did any of you see the incident? Would you have given it as a penalty? Because I've seen it 4 or 5 times and I can't make my mind up. Stel?
I think they're just both as guilty as each other. Didn't the ball come off Kermorgan as well? It's just one of those things. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't in a day. But let's be brutally honest. As good as Fulham have been the back end of this season, Reading have been outstanding. And I think Yap Sam, I'm not just saying this as a United fan, I think Yap Sam has done a fantastic job. I mean, okay, they were fortunate to beat Fulham. I mean, Habsy had the game of his life, and the problem is he's prone to making serious errors. But as you mentioned, Kermorgan, he's been a revelation this season. He's 35 years old, and Stam is mixing experience with like McShane, Kermorgan, Van der Berg with youth. We got Blackett, Evans, and Ulori. So I don't know. This final is going to be an interesting one. I think both games ended 1-0 to either side this season, so I don't really expect an entertaining final. But if anything, my money's going to be on Reading. They just seem to be a bit more, I'd say, technically gifted and probably have a bit more going forward.
Dan, what were your thoughts on firstly the penalty, and secondly, who do you think is going to come up?
I thought the penalty was harsh. I don't know if anyone's forensically checked Martin Atkinson's betting accounts over the last 2 weeks, but we'll leave that to the powers that be. Yeah, I thought it was a harsh penalty. I don't like giving penalties, Harry. I'm quite consistent with this. I like a penalty to be like 80%, 20% clear cut, and then I'll start awarding it, especially in a game that big. So I thought it was harsh in that respect. I agree with Stel about Reading. I think Reading are going to be a bit more streetwise in the final. Huddersfield, they've had a great season, haven't they? They weren't expected to be anywhere near it. I suppose Reading weren't really one of the fancy sides beforehand either, but I think Yapstam's had a great season. You've got some experienced pros in there who will know how to handle the occasion. The player Stel's just mentioned there, particularly the likes of McShane, who have been around the block, they've been in relegation fights, promotion scraps, they know what they're doing. Yapstam's played enough big games. I know it's the players you have to play, but having a manager in the dugout at half-time, for example, where he can bring you in and say the right things, I think in a game like this is going to have a big impact. And I just think Reading are going to grind this one out. It's going to be boring.
The thing is, Dan, I agree with you, but the problem we have now with Reading is that they've got new owners. They've got new Chinese owners, and we've seen what Birmingham did when they got new owners. They just got rid of their man and brought in Gianfranco Zola. I just hope that, this isn't a distraction, because obviously Yapstam's done a fantastic job, as you said. These new owners have come in literally yesterday. So do they have another man in mind? Are they going to stick with Yapstam? That could be a little factor that may play a part in whoever goes up in this game.
I mean, surely they're not going to rock the boat before the playoff final, though. I mean,
well, listen, Birmingham were 3 points off a playoff spot when they sacked what's his name? I forget his name now.
Gary Rowett.
Gary Rowett. So why not? Stranger things have happened.
I've got a pretty simple way of looking at it. I mean, I want Reading to now come up. I tipped Reading on last week's show to come up, and the reason I want Reading to come up is because I just feel that if you finish third, you are the third best team in the Championship, and therefore you should be the third team to gain entry to the Premier League. That's just the way I see it. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't really think playoffs are a fair way of deciding it. I don't see how a team who finished sixth deserve the same privileges as a team who finished third. So in my view, I'd like to see Reading come up for justice in a way.
I see what you mean, mate. But the thing is, when you look at Huddersfield, when Wagner took over from Chris Powell, which I think was November 2015, the club were like 18th in the table. They're going to go down 100%. But he's brought in this kind of identity that hasn't been seen in the Championship before. And all right, fine, he made 8 signings, and most of them have played a huge part in the club's promotion drive. You look at like Lapara, Moy, I think Schindler, and Hefele, the defender, I think he's like their third highest goal scorer with 5 goals. Now, they were effectively in the hunt for a promotion spot up until the last 10 games, but they lost 6, I think. There was we're talking bad losses here. There was Forest, they lost 2-0. Birmingham, they lost 2-0. They lost 4-0 to Bristol City. And all 3 of them were relegation candidates. And then you look at playoff hopefuls, they lost 4-1 to Fulham and 3-0 against Cardiff. So it's almost as if they ran out of gas with like 10 games to go. They said, which is probably why they fielded a weak team against Birmingham on the penultimate week. But I see what you mean about the team coming third, which obviously is Reading. But then when you look at Huddersfield's rise under this manager, you can't say they haven't deserved to be up there or even in with a shout.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about having discussed the teams looking to come up, let's turn our attention to the third and final team to drop out of the Premier League. After an awful first half of the season and having sat bottom at Christmas, surely Marco Silva deserves some credit for even making a fight of it with Hull City. Dan, do you expect him to be offered another job? I mean, surely he can hold his head high after putting in that sort of performance.
Yeah, I do think sometimes managers turn up and you just know they've got it about them from the outset, and he's another one of those. And I think there'll be a lot of clubs wanting him. I hope for his sake, I hope for the Premier League's sake, we see him again. First of all, I hope for his sake that he doesn't take a job offer too early. I don't want him to get offered the Watford job and then take it and then have to struggle again and have to sell players to buy players. I want him to hold out for a good job for himself, somewhere where he's got a bit more of a fighting chance, so he can prove his worth. I mean, the guy's proved he can set a side up. He's proved he's brave. Selling, I mean, Hull City had 2 players, and he sold them both in January in order to fund. It's like playing Football Manager, where you like get rid of someone just to generate funds because you want to play the game. It sounds silly, but to do that, to get rid of those 2 players. I wrote him off. I thought, what on earth is this guy doing? Snodgrass is still their top scorer. I think their second top scorer or joint top scorer is Michael Dawson. If your second top scorer is Michael Dawson and you're selling your top scorer off, I mean, it sounds like insanity to me, but the players he brought in were brilliant. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, this as well, but you know, like Inter Milan are being linked with every manager under the sun who they've got no chance of getting whatsoever. He could go and do a job somewhere like that and turn a club's fortunes around. I rate him really highly. I know you rated him highly from the outset, Harry. And he's come over. He's won 6 games in. I think he had 17 games, didn't he? So he's won a third of his games. I think his home defeat by Sunderland was his first home defeat in something like 3 seasons. So he proves he can set up a side. He's proved he's astute in the transfer market. And I hope he gets another job in England, and I hope he holds out for the right job.
Stel, do you think he's capable of managing one of Europe's top clubs?
Mate, listen, this guy is he's meticulous, he's methodical, he's measured. You know, he's one of the most underrated coaches out there. I mean, don't forget, he coached in Greece with Olympiacos, with one of the most disgusting owners you'll ever meet. They've got horrible owners at Hull City. I mean, let's be honest, when he stepped in, they were like a dysfunctional family, weren't they? I mean, at the beginning of the season, the fans wanted the owners out because they wanted to change the name or something. Steve Bruce walked out. Mike Phelan came in, which is a bloody disaster. They started the season with 8 fit players. He came in January, and he brought in the likes of Markovic. He brought in a whole host of players on loan. And as Dan said, he got a shot of his 2 best players. Like Snodgrass, I think getting rid of him was fantastic because he was like a cancer, wasn't he? He just didn't want to be there. You could tell his body language, his behaviour. And as you said, players like Huddleston, Dawson, Maloney, they all stepped up. Jakupovic, you know, he was like Gandalf in goal sometimes, you know. And someone like Nias, who was scoring goals, he's giving Koeman something to think about. So I don't see why he can't step into another job. Look what he did at Sporting Lisbon. Absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, good luck to the guy. When he came in, I remember Paul Merson lambasted him on telly saying, why'd they bring this foreign guy in or whatever? Well, I'm sorry, Paul Merson. He's here. Tough. And to be honest, I think he's going to end up at Watford. That's my opinion.
Yeah, he's been linked with the job.
Mm.
I hope he doesn't. I hope he doesn't go to Watford. I've got to be honest. I do hope he holds out. I agree with you completely about needing to get rid of Snodgrass. But what impressed me was that's still a brave decision for a new manager coming into a club. A lot of managers would have bottled that. A lot of managers would have tried to pander to his needs, built a team around him, play where you want, Snodgrass, do what you need to do, float around in the middle, sulk in training. He came in, he took one look at him and said, you know what, I don't like your attitude. And you're going to West Ham. And that move hasn't worked out for Snodgrass either. And Hull City are a lot better equipped to come back up next season just for Silva having spent 3 or 4 months at that football club.
Just one thing as well, before we move on from championship sides, it's just worth pointing out that Alavi on last week's show actually predicted a Sheffield Wednesday Fulham playoff final. So big shout out to Alavi for another fantastic prediction. And just remember, if you want to win some money, do the opposite of what he says. All right, let's move on. Craig Shakespeare says he expects to be told within days whether he will remain Leicester City manager. The 53-year-old signed a deal until the end of the season when he replaced Claudio Ranieri in February. He steered last season's Premier League champions away from the relegation danger and also led the Foxes to the Champions League quarter-final. How much of an impact has he had since taking over, and does he deserve the job on a full-time basis? Starting with you, Dan.
I suppose if you're a caretaker manager, I guess that's a dress rehearsal. So he deserves a crack at the job on a full-time basis just because he's gone in there and he's got results and he's turned something around. How well has he actually done? I'm not sold, to be honest. Despite their bad form, there was a lot of problems there with players' egos. I think that's clear. He was still managing the Premier League champions, and to be honest, if you look at the games that he picks up points in, if you look at the amount of time he's been there and the games he's won, with the exception of turning around the Champions League game, which was obviously an impressive result, I'd be expecting last season's champions, with all but one of their players in, to be winning that many games anyway. So I don't know whether it's the players just started playing again. It's hard to decide how much of it is actually attributable to Shakespeare. I don't want to be too hard. It's something about the guy. I just don't like him.
Well,
I know that's not
for one thing.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair enough reason. I know it's not. It doesn't feel fair just to make proper judgments like that on a podcast just based on a gut feeling of a personality. But there's something about him that I don't like. He deserves the job because he's got results. So give him 6 months to a season, Leicester, and see how he gets on. But I'm not convinced that it's all because Shakespeare's come in. If Marco Silva had gone there, how would he have done? If Sam Allardyce went there, how would he have done? He was still managing the Premier League champions, and let's see how he gets on next season. Let's see where they are come Christmas. Whether he's got them back in the top half or he's floating around like the mid-table, top 12 sort of positions.
Stel, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think he deserves the job on a full-time basis?
I think the whole Leicester City situation has gone down like a fight in church, really. When you look at their form under Pearson, back in a couple of seasons ago, I think they lost 15 games in a row or 13 games, and all of a sudden they started playing, and it was down to Esteban Cambiasso galvanising that team in the dressing room. It's almost as if they just ignored their manager, and then Ranieri comes in with his ideas, and they win the league title. They do the whole fairy tale thing, and all of a sudden they start losing games, and they don't want to play again. This sounds familiar, doesn't it? And then this Shakespeare comes in and becomes caretaker, and all of a sudden he's going to get the job. Well, let him get the job. Give him the job, I say, because I guarantee you this, he won't last till Christmas. Because what's going to happen all over again, he's going to start off pretty well, few wins, are going to be, in the top 6, and everyone's going to be like, oh, it's going to be Leicester all over again. They've got a chance of winning the league, and Jamie Vardy is going to be scoring his goals and doing his stupid celebrations, but it's going to go downhill. It's going to go downhill, and then they'll be lumbered with, I don't know, some third-rate foreign manager, and Paul Merson will be doing cartwheels because maybe this guy's the right guy, So for me, listen, I've got no respect for Leicester City, to be fair, and I know people are going to get on my back about this, but I think players like Jamie Vardy are just deplorable human beings. I think Riyad Mahrez is a mercenary. Kasper Schmeichel is another one. Robert Huth is horrible. I don't like him. I really don't like him. And if bad things happen to him, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear to me there were off-the-field issues towards the end of Ranieri's stay, and the upturn in form with the same players is basically the proof in the pudding. I mean, maybe Claudio was too eager to advance the team, and maybe he abandoned some of the principles that made him successful last season. Who knows? But
I think there were some players who were more interested in their Champions League run. There are players. There's nothing I hate more than when an unfancied team, do well, and the vultures come in and pick all their players. But if the Champions League didn't exist, some of them players would have walked. Yeah, there are players who stayed with Leicester just to have a Champions League campaign with Leicester City, and they switched off in the league. And we're not talking about the same quality of player here, but obviously you saw what happened at Chelsea last season. They were league champions. They had their problems. They didn't want to play for their manager. They ended up in the bottom half of the table for most of the season and just smuggled into 10th. Then this season, a new manager comes in. They turn it around. They start playing again. So I'm not going to write Leicester off and say, do you know what? They've got no chance if it's Shakespeare or the right manager comes in, if the players want to play. Obviously, they're not as good as the Chelsea players. So there is a chance. But I think there's a lot of the players at Leicester there who stayed last season. they don't want to be at that football club anymore. Mahrez won't be there. I don't think Vardy will get an offer as good as he got last summer in terms of the size of a club. I don't think he'll be staying. The defenders are another couple of years older, and tactics have moved on this season dramatically since even tonight. Leicester tried to experiment with 3-5-2 for the first time, and they let in 4 goals in the second half. So there's a lot of soul searching needs to be done at that football club, like Stel says. And yeah, give Shakespeare the job. We'll soon find out if it's Shakespeare or the players, but I don't think 3 or 4 of the players who started the season at Leicester will be there next season. I don't think Kasper Schmeichel will be there. I think there's going to be an exodus at that club this summer, and they could find themselves in a bit of trouble.
So the thing is, sorry to interrupt, Harry. The thing is, when you win the league title, every team that wins a league title, they always freshen things up somewhere. They might bring in 2 or 3 players, let go of 2 or 3 players. Okay, they sold Kante, which obviously was a big loss, but they still kept your Danny Simpsons, your Robert Huth, your Vasilevskis, your Wes Morgans, your Christian Fuchs, Chilwell. Where's the change there? There's no, how can I put it? There's no fresh ideas. What about up front? Slimani, what's he done? This is what I'm saying. Like, they haven't invested wisely. They haven't improved drastically. And as I said, when it comes to competition for places, you can practically pick that team. It's not as if you're sitting there scratching your thinking, oh, would I play Albrighton or would I play Damari Gray? Well, no, because you know that Albrighton's going to play because Damari Gray is too young for this level. It's just a bland team. They're a mid-table team, and them winning the Premier League was a miracle. But that's only because everyone else was crap. Everyone else was crap.
I agree. But final thing I'll say on it, Shakespeare should not get the job, in my opinion.
Give it to him and let him fail. Give it to him. If he wants it, give it to him, and then we'll see how good he is. He's going to do one in
He will not cope with that job. And if I was a Leicester fan, I'd be standing there shouting, get him out and get a proper manager in. Anyway, speaking of managers, Watford announced the imminent departure of Italian boss Walter Mazzarri. He'll take charge of his last game in their final fixture of the season versus Manchester City. Certain sections of the Watford fans have been critical of his style, but ultimately he's guided them to Premier League survival. For a club like Watford, surely that was the primary aim. And how would you guys assess Walter Mazzarri's time at Vicarage Road?
It was steady. He hasn't done anything fancy. I think Watford are in one of those unfortunate positions where, even though they're going to finish 1 place above the relegation zone, if results go as I expect they will on Sunday, it looks a lot worse on paper than it's been, in the sense that they've never really been in the relegation mix. They've been a safe distance away. There's always, when you've been looking at it saying, well, who's going to get sucked into this? I know I tipped Watford to go down in New Year. I thought they'd be the team who get sucked in. But it's always been another team you've been looking at, Burnley, Bournemouth. So he survived comfortably in the end in terms of being threatened. So what more do Watford want than that this season? All right, if they've looked at his style of football, the way it's been played, the way some of the players have responded to him, and they've decided he's not the man for next season, I haven't got a problem with that, to be honest. I'd much rather that than they start the season not really wanting him and then sack him after 4 games. That doesn't make sense. So I think he's done all right. I don't think he should be disappointed or ashamed of his job. He's gone in there, he's managed a championship club in the Premier League. He's kept them up safely. And when they went on a run just after Christmas, didn't they? They got thumped by Tottenham. They got thumped by someone else. They'd lost like 4-0 and 5-0 in quick succession. And after that, a lot of clubs go into freefall, but he steadied the ship there. So I think he's done a good job, to be honest. If they don't like the way he plays and they want to try something new for next season, then you know what? Good luck to him.
Stel, what do you make of Walter Mazzarri's reign at Watford?
The thing is, he was on a hiding to nothing before he got the job. I mean, you know, Quique Sanchez Flores was sacked for some strange reason. I don't know what the guy did wrong, to be fair. I thought it was fantastic for Watford. Then obviously Mazzarri doesn't speak English, so that doesn't help. But it's easy to say, oh, it's because he didn't speak the language. But then you got little things like, you know, they're making the same errors defensively, like especially from set pieces. I mean, he tried to address these issues, but you know, when you look at the last 10 minutes of every Watford game, they would just capitulate. Then he brought in players like like Tom Cleverley. I've seen Tom Cleverley play. He's crap. Okay, I don't know what people see in Tom Cleverley. He's just like another Jamie O'Hara. This was what I see. But again, it just seemed like players were devoid of ideas, and a lot of them were unsure of their roles. And you see him like pointing at each other aimlessly, completely clueless. He broke up the partnership of Vigalo and Dini, which was massive. Last season, they scored, I think, about 40 odd goals between them. We were saying on our show, if you stop them from scoring, you're going to win the game, because those two were the only players that would get them goals. And I think the other thing that annoyed a lot of Watford fans was the things that he said, especially the back end of the season, where he said, I kind of expect us to lose our last 6 games. Well, be that as it may, you don't say those kind of things. It's like when David Moyes came into Sunderland, the first thing he said was, oh, well, we're in a relegation scrap. It was only the first game of the season where they lost to Man City and already in the relegation scrap. So I think it was the right decision to let him go. And let's be honest, and Dan, I don't know if you're a Serie A fan, he had a couple of decent seasons at Napoli, but he failed at Inter. And again, it was another Pozzo signing, wasn't he? It just didn't seem to make sense, them bringing him in. Personally, I think they're going to go British this time. I really do. Don't know who, but...
Do you know what with the Pozzos though? I'm not sure they will go British.
No,
I don't know. I don't know who they'll go for. It wouldn't surprise me if they bring Ranieri in. To be totally honest, it wouldn't surprise me if they bring Ranieri in, not just because of the Italian connection, but that's where my money would go if I had to have a bet. But you're right, he didn't do well at Inter Milan. Obviously, he picked up the Coppa Italia at Napoli, and that's where he made his name. I know Alavi rated him quite highly, and he wrote an article at the beginning of the season about Mazzari and how impressed he was, and Watford got off to a reasonable start. But I don't want to sidetrack to David Moyes, but you made the point there about David Moyes saying about the relegation battle, and I remember watching that interview, and I kicked my cat because I was so annoyed. And the reason I was so annoyed, and my cat wasn't happy either.
I don't think RSPCA will be happy either if they're watching this.
But my cat goes out when football's on now. It's not safe. But what annoyed me about that interview was they played Manchester City. He's turned up at a new job, and Man City were winning 1-0 and really comfortable. And then Sunderland scored after about 75 minutes, and Jermaine Defoe scored. At this point, you've played half of a game into a new season. You do not need a point that badly after one game. You've got 37 games left. So anyone in their right mind, I'm watching that thinking, well, you got momentum now. Go on and try and have a go for the next 10 minutes. See if you can, catch Man City cold or ride the wave. Try and get a second goal. 3 minutes later, he subbed off his goal scorer. Then he comes out after the game and says he's in a relegation scrap. That's why you're in a relegation scrap, because you've got no bottle and you wanted to draw your way to survival. I am so glad that man has been relegated, and I'm glad he's staying at Sunderland because I want him to fail in the Championship as well.
Listen, I've been saying this for years. The guy is a fraud. Okay, he's a fraud. And people say to me, oh, yeah, but he had a great season at Everton. What great season? He got them 4th, and then they got knocked out in the qualifying stage of the Champions League. The guy's a fraud. How can you go to the league champions, right? And Harry knows how I feel about David Moyes. How can you go to the league champions and then play teams like Stoke and lose and say, I don't know what we have to do to win, or we aspire to be like Man City, or before the Newcastle game at home. The Newcastle game at home, they hadn't beaten us for like 50 years at Old Trafford. We'll try to win. This guy is a fraud. He brings in Oviedo, a third choice left back at Everton at Sunderland. He brings in Enichibi, Pienaar. This isn't 2004. What is this guy on, honestly? And Ellis Shaw, whatever his name is, the moment he picked up that phone to call David Moyes' agent or David Moyes himself, that's when Sunderland were relegated. They're lucky that they got someone like Pickford and Defoe, because had it not been for them two, they'd have been relegated in December.
I'm not a David Moyes fan, as you guys probably already know, but I've got to say that this relegation of Sunderland has been coming for a number of seasons now. They've escaped it for the last 3 or 4 seasons by the skin of their teeth, simply because that club have zero ambition. They don't invest in players. They've had a piss poor squad for years, and they've been lucky to scrape out of it. David Moyes is bad, but Sunderland will always going down, in my opinion.
They've had a history. Ellis Shaw, it is a history of terrible appointments, like Paolo Di Canio, I mean, that's not going to work from the outset. And he gets off to a decent start, and then he's gone. Gus Poyet gets off to a decent start, then he's gone. Sam Allardyce was obviously an appointment for the job, and he kept him up. And you could argue they were unlucky to lose him to England. But you know what? When he was sacked from England, and I know it was only September, they should have rung Sam Allardyce up and said, you know what, Sam? You're in a bit of a pickle here. We're going to stick by you. We never wanted to lose you. Obviously, we got David in charge. Let's see how the season goes, but be on standby because, we'd like to get you back at this club if things don't work out. At that point, Sam Allardyce would have been delighted to receive that phone call. He's looking around wondering where his next job's coming from.
He's probably down the pub. They probably rang him and got through to his voicemail.
Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe he was on the phone to some other agents at the time. I don't know what it was, but it was such a lazy appointment of David Moyes. They've looked at a man who some people say he's done well at Everton. You could argue that. Let's not do that now. It didn't really impress me that much. And they thought when they signed David Moyes, they hit the jackpot. But everyone worth their salt knew that was not what Sunderland needed, and so it's proved. And they've been embarrassing. And Tottenham drew at the Stadium of Light, so I'm absolutely furious. I've just remembered that.
Do you know what? This whole thing with David Moyes, right? He went to Sociedad, right? He was there for what, a year, if that. I'm sitting there thinking, when he got the Sunderland job, I'm thinking maybe he knows something about their youth academy. Maybe he might find a couple of little gems because Spanish players are technically gifted. They're tactically aware. Nothing. He goes and brings in Donald Love, who only played like 70 minutes for United. He brought Paddy McNair, who was scared of his own shadow. Januzaj on loan. Januzaj's crap. I've never understood the hype about this guy. And I was thinking, right, well, why don't you just bring in Tim Cahill because he's available on the free? and then what does he do? He brings in Julian Lescott. He went to AEK Athens and they laughed at him. AEK Athens, they're like the 6th best team in Greece, and they can't afford nothing. So this guy it was destined to fail. Do you know what? I'm glad they're down. I'm glad they're down. And as you said, I'm glad that he's going to stay because in the Championship he's going to get found out again. And he's going to get like a League 2 job and he's going to get found out again. He's going to end up at Celtic. Rehab.
Right, anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to our quick European roundup. Monaco beat Saint Etienne 2-0 to seal their first French title since 2000. The team have received high praise this season for their free-flowing attacking football and their outstanding Champions League run. Europe's hottest young property, Mbappe, opened the scoring before Valerie Germain struck late in injury time to put the icing on the cake. Their first title since 2000. How good is Kylian Mbappe? And do you expect him to be playing for Monaco next season? Starting with you, Stel.
He's a very good player, as you've seen this season. Still a teenager. Bags of potential, bags of ability. I think he'll be there next season, though. I think we'll see a few players leave Monaco, like your Bakayokos, your who's that midfielder? The Portuguese fellow, is he Brazilian?
Bernardo Silva.
Bernardo Silva. I think it will go. So yeah, I can see him staying another season at least. Don't forget, when you have these wonder kids break through, they always have like a breakthrough season, and the season after they kind of not wane a bit, but they don't perform as well as they do in the previous season. We've seen with Rashford. When he broke through, everyone was like, "Oh, Rashford's fantastic." I call him Rashford. I don't think he's all that, to be fair, but you can't expect too much from these players. We saw in the Champions League game against Juventus that if he's marked very well, tightly, not given much time on the ball, he's ineffective. And let's be honest, the French league, it's not great. But you can only score against what's in front of you, I guess. So, yeah, good luck to the kid. I think he's a cracking player, to be fair.
Dan, Real Madrid need just one more point to secure the La Liga title after their 4-1 win at Celta Vigo. If Zinedine Zidane was to win the La Liga title, which it looks like he will do now, and win the Champions League, will people have to start regarding him as one of the world's top managers?
I think, first of all, you've only got to go back a year and a half and people were saying that he wasn't all that and he had a bad start to his time at Madrid and how long was he going to last. Then he went on that ridiculous run, didn't he, of about 16 consecutive wins, turned the tide for him. There's something about Spanish football. When you're talking about world's top managers, I always want to see more, which is harsh because I don't know what more I want him to do. If he wins the Champions League for the second season in a row, it's hard to knock him down for that. But I don't know. There's something about when a manager goes to a team like Real Madrid and wins the La Liga title. It doesn't impress me that much, particularly this season, in the sense that you've only got to beat one team this season. Atletico Madrid have not been the force in the league they were. Seville threatened to have a decent run. What do I want to see from Zidane in order for me to call him a top manager? What I want to see from Zidane is I want to see how he replaces some of the players he's got now. So a lot of their fringe players, there's talks that they might leave. James Rodriguez probably going to Manchester United. Oh, I've got a good in the know if you've got time. Someone I know works in the passport office, and apparently in December last year, a visa was applied for by James Rodriguez. So because of that, I put money on Rodriguez joining Chelsea and Man United in the January transfer window, and it didn't happen. So yeah, cheers for that. I won't say his name just in case you're not allowed to share stories if you work in a passport office. But yeah, back to where I was. Look, Ronaldo's still a machine. So if he ever slows down, how Zidane replaces that? I just want to see him do something else rather than coast his way to a league title in Spain. I'm being really harsh on the bloke. Do I not like him because he headbutted Materazzi when I was cheering for my beloved Italy in the final? I don't know what it is. I just want to see him do something else. Yeah, it's impressive. Well done. Great stuff. But, invariably, if you're at Real Madrid for 2 or 3 seasons, you're going to be winning stuff. So, yeah, he's done well. I don't know what else to say, really. I don't know. He's done well.
Is this similar to the situation with Pep Guardiola? Because, Pep Guardiola's come to England now and people are calling him a fraud. Yet he was very similar in the sense that he was a club legend, walked into the Barcelona job and inherited a bloody good team, won everything under the sun. But even now, some people are not convinced. Is there a sense that maybe even if Zidane does win everything, he needs to go abroad to test himself? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so there is an element of that. And the thing with Pep Guardiola is I took some of his achievements down as well, because I think at Bayern Munich, he only really did the minimum. At Manchester City this season, he's done less than the minimum so far. But the thing with Guardiola right now is what anyone can tell you about Guardiola watching him is he can go to any team and implement his style. And it might take 1 year in Germany. It might take 2 years in England. But you can see there he's got the ability to coach players to do what he wants to do. If what he wants to do doesn't work at a given time or circumstances don't allow that, so Manchester City style might take an extra year to embed in the Premier League. But you can see he's got that ability to go into a side. I think he could go and manage West Ham Guardiola, and he could get them players playing in a certain way. So I'd give him the nod over Zidane for that, and obviously longevity. So let's see Zidane do that when he has to replace his squad, or if he does invariably go to manage another side. He might go and manage Juventus one day, Zidane. He was a club legend there. So, yeah, a bit too premature to be calling him one of the world's best for me.
Still, Juventus wrapped up the Coppa Italia last night. They're on course for a historic treble. What do you make of Maxi Allegri? Is he one of the world's elite managers?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What he's done for that club has been nothing short of a miracle as far as I'm concerned. You don't... Listen, Conte had assembled a fantastic squad and everything, but it's taking it to that next level. He's got them to 2 Champions League finals. He's coasted Serie A this season. I know they lost to Roma the other day, but they're going to win. They're going to win Serie A, aren't they? I think his big test will come next season, though, even maybe the year after if he's still there. And the reason why I say this is because Inter will have a new manager next season. They sacked Pioli the other day. I know they've had problems with their ultras, but they've got Chinese investors. I think Simeone is a big shout to go to Inter next season as head coach. Although I've heard that Atletico have got a new stadium, so he probably wants to be there for when they open it. Milan, again, new owners. I think they bought Rodriguez, their left back from Wolfsburg. They're going to be in with a shout next season. Obviously, Lazio doing well, Napoli doing well. So next season will be a big test for him. But yeah, he's a fantastic head coach. And I think he's one of those head coaches where he can go anywhere and he will do a job. I think he's brilliant. He motivates the players. He's got a system. He gets them to work hard. And again, he's tactically astute as well. He was like that at Milan. They didn't pull up trees, so to speak. I think he won Serie A there, didn't he? He won Serie A there. So yeah, I've got no doubt his ability, and I just hope that he doesn't come to the Premier League, because there's only one team that he can realistically go to, and they're your boys, and I don't want to see you not doing well, especially after this season.
Right. Moving on. Players who dive in English football could face bans from as early as next season. The Football Association will vote on retrospective action at its annual general meeting, which was held today. They are expected to approve the proposal. The governing body would need the backing of the Premier League, the English Football League, and the Professional Footballers Association to introduce the rule change. But it's understood they're all on board, and so it's very likely this is going to happen. Under the proposed new rules, a panel would review footage from the weekend each month, looking for cases of simulation, and any player found unanimously guilty of diving would be given a suspension. Would you lads welcome this idea? Dan, would you welcome the FA introducing something like this? Will it help us eradicate diving?
Yeah, I welcome it. Something needs to happen. I've been saying for years, you need to look after the game and punish people for diving. What worries me, Harry, is there are so many people who don't know what a dive is. They don't know what a dive is. And that's where I'm afraid, if I had to put my money on it, this will fall down. It will fall down very, very quickly. Because if you've had contact and dive, is this panel going to do the right thing? Are they going to sit there and say, do you know what? Let's pick on a Spurs player, to be fair. Let's pick on Dele Alli. He likes to go down. So there was a dive against Swansea where no one touched him. It was fresh air. That's easy. Yeah, panel's going to look at that and say, all right, you're banned for 2 games. Or there was the Heung-min Son incident against West Ham where the defender went to ground. He left his foot in there, trod on the defender and threw himself to the floor, and he got a penalty. That, to me, that's a dive. If you've not been knocked down, then that's a dive. And I think I can tell, looking at a replay, of how a player falls as to whether it's a dive or not. I don't know what this panel's criteria is going to be. And is simulation, is it going to be you've dived to get a penalty, we look at that? Or is it going to be a little dive on the edge of the box? Or I don't know. I'd like to see what their plans are. I welcome it. But to me, a dive is a dive. I don't care if the defender lunged in stupidly, as Son did in the semi-final. I don't care if there was a little bit of contact first. If you have thrown yourself to the floor and have not been knocked down, that's a dive, and that's what I want to see eradicated. Because that, to me, is worse. You know the Ashley Young dives? Those ones where he gets a little hand in the back and you're getting an opponent sent off. They're the dives I want to see taken away. Is this panel going to look at that and say, well, look, there was the contact in slow motion, 100 frames, and then not punish the player? That's what I want to see. I'd like to see how this is going to work, but I definitely welcome something being done.
Stel, what are your thoughts on it? Do you not think that the reason we have a diving culture is because of the poor level of officiating, and players sometimes now feel the need to go down so that an incident can be spotted? I mean, Sterling against Spurs earlier on in the season was a prime example of that. If he doesn't go down, well, he stayed on his feet in that case, and he didn't get the penalty. So are players diving because they feel they need to nowadays?
You know what? At the beginning of that question, I thought you were going to go all Brexit on me and say it's because of the foreigners, but no. I think
I voted Remain, by the way.
The thing is, I think with the FA have opened another can of worms here, because it's like Dan said. How do you interpret a dive? I mean, you might see players jumping over a goalkeeper to get out of the way, and then the referee gives a penalty. Fine, but then you got to look at like the Rashford incident where he's blatantly taken a dive, but he was going nowhere. So what constitutes a dive? What is it? What if like Jamie Vardy leaves his leg in, and gets tripped. Is that a dive? These factors, man, I don't think they've thought this through. I really don't. And who's going to be on the panel? Is it going to be a referee? Is it going to be a former player? Is it going to be a pundit? We don't even know these things. So yes, it's a good idea to punish divers, but how are you going to measure a dive? How are you going to gauge it? And then there's another factor which no one's really mentioned. Let's say Rashford against Swansea, he's taken a dive, United score, and let's say that was the winning goal, and it happens to be the incident that cost Swansea their Premier League place. Then what? Do Swansea turn and say, well, he dived, so we deserve to stay up? It's such a conundrum, man. I think sometimes things just need to be left as they are. I'm firmly on the fence on this one, man. I really am on the fence.
You make a good
on my backside.
You make a good point there, though, where let's say Rashford dives against Swansea, right? He dives against Swansea, United win 1-0. Rashford then gets banned for 2 games. Those next 2 games are against Swansea's relegation rivals. So Swansea have been hit twice there because they've lost a game for the dive, and then their relegation rivals have then got an easier game because the player's been banned for that game. So they need to seriously think about what they want to do there. So I don't like sitting on the fence either. I want them to retrospectively ban players for diving, but I have no confidence in the Premier League's ability to do this properly. I don't think they're capable of doing this properly, and I think it could cause more harm than good. What I'd like to see is, first of all, referees. They go on their little training camps, and you see them on TV in their little tents and playing five-a-side football with ex-pros and whatever. I'd like to see the referees be taken to some kind of specialist in the field and be taught what someone looks like when they've been knocked over, and what someone looks like when they're flinging their arms back like Didier Drogba. And let's do that first. Let's see if that has an improvement, and then work on the next step. But the whole double jeopardy thing, where you could cost a team 3 points, get banned for 2 games, and their rivals have 2 easier matches as a result, that could cause big problems if that scenario came about.
But see, here's the other thing, Dan. It's like we've been talking about video evidence for God knows how long. I know Harry's an advocate of video evidence. So let's say Ashley Young dives and then retrospective action occurs and he gets like a 3-game ban. But what about during the game when he has dived? Does the video evidence count in this, or is it just for goals now? It's becoming the games have become too fractious. You know,
video evidence should only be used under the circumstances of a goal. So every goal should be reviewed. Every penalty decision should be reviewed, and every red card should be reviewed. Those are the 3 things I want to be reviewed, because for me, they're game-changing decisions. So if you review a goal and you find something wrong with it, you strike it off. Simple. If someoe's about to receive a straight red card or their second yellow card, which impacts the game because they go down to 10 men, review it. That's how I want it done. I'm not saying we pull up a foul on the halfway line, because like you guys are talking about this double jeopardy scenario where Swansea could, lose 1-0 and then their relegation rivals have an easier game. I think you're going too deep in that. And I think if you look deep enough, you will always find an objection to anything that they're proposing. And I just, I think you're looking at it you're looking at the what ifs too much, in my view.
I'm not sold. I'd want to see it. It's a good idea, but we do a podcast. Stel does a really successful podcast. We can all sit on our podcast in our living rooms, on a phone to our mates, in our WhatsApp groups. We can all come up with good ideas. I don't want someone from the FA to do something I could do. I want someone from the FA to tell me how they're going to implement it. That's why they work on the FA.
Vote for me. FA chief executive should be me.
I won't, as long as you don't start sending me a watch at Christmas, because I don't want to get involved in that sort of stuff, to be honest.
Listen, we had David Dean on the FA board, and Arsenal got their own way all the time, so I can't have you on the board. Sure.
Oh, coming from a Man United supporter, Jesus Christ, give me a break. Oh my God, the whole Fergie era was decision after decision. Constantly. We're going to start calling you the fisherman instead of allowing you. All right, guys, we need to move on because we've seriously run over this week, but it's been a great show, of course. We're going to refer over to some of our viewers and listeners' questions. I'm going to ask you guys a question each, and I need quick fire answers because we are running out of time. First one to Dan. Should the FA have been more sympathetic towards United and allowed them to bring their final fixture forward to give them more time to prepare for the Europa League final?
Right, quick answer. No, they shouldn't. First thing I'd say is the Europa League's on a Thursday, so why is the final on a Wednesday? Let's get that out of the way straight away. Games are played at weekends. That final should be on a Thursday. That's the first thing. The reason they shouldn't is because Mourinho's been complaining for the last 3 weeks about how he doesn't want to play Premier League games. He's played weekend sides. He's been preparing for this game for 3 weeks, essentially. So I think that counters that. It's unfortunate. That's just the way it is.
Tough. Right, this next one is from Barry. This one is at me, no doubt about it. Harry, will you be changing from Thursday nights? Will you be changing the show from Thursday nights when Arsenal are in the Europa League? The honest answer to that one, Barry, is I don't know, but it's my worst nightmare. So I have to believe that Arsenal are still going to qualify for the Champions League because rearranging my week is going to be an absolute nightmare. Stel, this one is to you. This one's coming especially for you. This one's from Andy, who sent this one in by text.
You know what? If it was Rob Palmer, I'd have pulled my hair out. But
Stel, what's going on at Man United? Last season, you finished 5th. You sacked Louis van Gaal, appointed Jose Mourinho, signed Zlatan Ibrahimovic, signed the Bundesliga Player of the Year, signed the world's most expensive player, go 25 games unbeaten, and you're still going to finish 6th.
He's been reading "Give Me Sport" memes too much, hasn't he? Okay, let's flip it a bit. Let's say take all of that into consideration. If United win on Wednesday, then what?
Then you've won 2 worthless competitions, in my opinion.
Well, one of them won't be worthless to you guys next season.
It will. I hold my hands up now. I can.
Oh, really? Mark this date down because I am telling you this now. When you are struggling to get top 4 because of this tournament, you wish you win the Europa League. I am telling you this now.
Mark this day down because I promise every listener of the Sofa Sports News podcast that if Arsenal win the Europa League next season, I will not be raving about it because to me, I'm not interested.
Were you interested when you were you upset when Arsenal lost to Galatasaray on penalties?
Yeah, but that was because it was against Galatasaray.
I'm gonna jump in here a minute because I think you're lying to our following there, Mr. Simu. You're lying to our following. You got asked a question from Barry there, and you just said, to be honest with you, I'm not sure. And the next question, you're telling me you're not interested. If you're not interested, then the pod will stay on a Thursday because you don't care about the Europa League. There'll be no Tuesday pod. There'll be no Wednesday pod. And you know what? If you decide halfway through the season that you actually like the Europa League, you could always do the pod from the Emirates Stadium because no one will disturb you there because you saw the empty seats there were against Sunderland. We'll have a nice pod with no sound interruptions. And
the thing is, the key factor that you guys are forgetting is it all depends on whether the Europa League is included in my season ticket next year. Because I understand that the Arsenal supporters trust that in talks with the club about making it a separate thing, making our season tickets cheaper and then giving us priority tickets for like £10, like they do in the League Cup at the moment. So that would have a massive impact, of course, because if it's not included in my season ticket and we're playing Belgian pub teams, like the one that knocked out Spurs earlier in the season, then I probably wouldn't be interested in going, to be honest with you. Right, anyway, enough about me. Let's get on to the rest of the questions before we finish up. With the Premier League season about to finish, what will you boys be doing all summer? Still, I'll put this one at you. Quick answer.
I've got 3-year-olds, man. I like to go to trampoline parks and soft plays. That's what I'm going to be doing on the weekend, man. Just taking the little one out and losing more hair, worrying about her because there's paedophiles everywhere. So, yeah.
Dan, what about you?
I just started building a trampoline in my back garden.
Oh, man, I don't know if you...
No, I might have finished that by the end of the season. I don't know. I started building it a couple of weeks back, and it has rained every day since, and there's been football on telly. So at the moment, it's just 3 legs and a little base. So I'll try and finish that project to see how we go on.
Get a net round it because there's going to be foxes jumping on it, I swear.
I like the John Lewis advert. I'm in no mood for that, to be honest.
It happens. It happens. Trust me, it happens.
I'll be out with the air rifle.
That's illegal, guys. Last question. I'm going to put this one to both of you. Just quick one-word answers. Is Harry Kane the best striker in the Premier League? This one's from Ibrahim. Dan?
Yes.
Both of you, yes. Oh, for God's sake, I might have to change my name. Anyways, you can check out our Sofa Sports News Facebook page. It's Sofa Sports News - the Football Fan Network. We've also got a group called the Football Fan Network. Guys, just before we sign off, your Twitter handles. Stel?
At On A Madness, and my professional one is at Shoot the Defense.
That's it. At Shoot the Defense, guys, check them out. Top show. Stel is the host. Really successful football podcast. Get some great guests. Good banter, good football discussion. Dan, your Twitter handle, please, sir.
It's at DDL_SSN.
DDL. Right, guys, you can also follow Sofa Sports News on Twitter. It's at Sofa Sports News _. And this show will be broadcast on Greek Beat Radio, the London community radio station. So a big shout out to DJ Funksy for always having us on air. You can listen to the Shive. You can listen to the show live each and every Thursday night from 9:15 p.m. via GreekBeatRadio.com, the TuneIn Radio app, or via the Facebook player pinned to the top of their page. Last week's football teaser. We do have a winner this time, which is incredible. The question was, which two French internationals played in the 1997 UEFA Champions League final? And the correct answer was Zinedine Zidane and Didier Deschamps. The winner is David Kellock from Ashburn in Virginia. So well done to you, my friend. This week's football teaser is another tough one. This is a really tough one. During my career, I was a teammate of Gareth Southgate, Phil Neville, Marcus Babbel, Mikhail Forsell, Tal Ben Haim, and Steed Malbronk. Who am I? Guys, if you know the answer, keep it stum. We're going to put that on the Facebook page and Twitter tomorrow. If you want to enter, you need to send a direct message to the Sofa Sports News page on Facebook, and the winner will be announced on next week's show. Also, next week, we'll be announcing the winner of our Fantasy Football League. I understand things have changed in the race for the title, thanks to Harry Kane and Heung-min Son's performances this evening for Spurs. Big hello to all our listeners all over the world. Those of you that listen from London, of course, from the States, the Shoot the Defense followers that also listen to hear even more of Stel. I mean, who wouldn't want to, right?
Not my missus.
What's that? Sorry, Stel?
Not my missus.
I bet she's fed up of it, innit? Mine is, for sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to say a huge thank you to all our partners for their continued support. So that's Greek Beat Radio, TagPay, Shoot the Defense, Elite Editorial Services, Devise Watches, Perfect Radio, and Nick Tanner Events. Make sure you leave us a review, share our page, share our show, spread the word. And for those of you listening on iTunes, make sure you hit subscribe. Guys, it was an absolute pleasure having you with us once again. Dan, thank you very much.
Pleasure as always.
And Stel, thanks again, and we'll be sure to see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on again, man.
That's all, folks.